All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good friend Sarah Jaffe. Sarah is an independent journalist whose work has been seen in Truth Out, Jacobin, The Nation, Alternet, and many more. She is the co-host, along with Josh Idelson, of the podcast Belabored, all of which and more you can find at adifferentclass.com. You can also find her on Twitter at Sarah L. Jaffe. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Well, so Sarah, you recently wrote a really, really great piece In These Times about the idea of opting for free time. What is this free time you're talking about? What is this? So, talk about the piece. It's great.
It's funny because we sort of put the title on it as opting for free time because we were joking about all of these pieces about sort of women opting in and opting out of the workforce and all of that. And like, what I'm actually arguing for in the piece is more than just an option for free time. It's really that we should have a right to it and that we should actually enact policy that makes that happen. So it's more than just an option, right? That, some people, the way things are right now, some people have an option for free time and other people don't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of it's kind of stem from, obviously this is a big issue that's been, that this is a major issue, but kind of the title at least is sort of the response to the New York Times piece about the opting out society opting back in.
Right, exactly. That I was working on this piece before that, actually. We've talked about this before on your show, that I do a lot of thinking about
right.
gender and gender roles and work and the role of working time in all of that, because women tend to do most of the unpaid labor in the home. We tend to work more hours, even though women's paid jobs are not necessarily the ones that have the longest hours. So, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the way we talk about, quote-unquote work-life balance. When we talk about work-life balance for women, it's always assumed that it is family. It's that it's your kids. It's that you're going to balance your need to be home to do unpaid work of raising and caring for children or sometimes other family members with your paid job. Whereas when we talk about work-life balance for men, to the extent that we ever do really have that conversation at all, we talk about life. We talk about John Boehner playing golf 100 times a year. We talk about actually having a life in a way that we just don't really for women.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously there's just the kind of inherent sexism that exists in our society, the kind of societal and structural sexism that's been around for decades. But why hasn't that really caught on? Because it really is such a major, just kind of the distinction between the way we look at men as far as this issue goes, and the way we look at how women do. Why do you think that is, other than just structural sexism, I guess?
I mean, partly the idea that women are naturally fulfilled by the unpaid work that they do at home,
which of course all women are, clearly.
Right, but the idea that this is naturally fulfilling also bleeds over into paid work, right? So we've talked about before, I think, the idea of certain kinds of labor being good for women. Women are inherently good at being teachers or at being nurses, because women are inherently more caring, and this actually bleeds into the wages that are paid to those jobs. This idea that you do it for the love of it and not because you need to get paid, whereas nobody assumes that bankers do it for the love of being a banker, right? Everybody assumes that bankers are doing it to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And this is a really complicated thing to struggle with because the people who do go into teaching and nursing do tend to be people who have feelings about it, right? I've been, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, I've been covering extensively the work of the New York State Nurses Association here, their fight to keep open a bunch of hospitals. And if we talk about that, right, like nurses, there's a nursing shortage in this country. There are never enough nurses. Nurses are always in demand for jobs. So these are people who are largely not worried about the fact that about getting a paycheck. You know, if these hospitals close, they will probably be fine. But what will happen is that the community where that hospital is will be that much further away from access to care. And so, meanwhile, we're seeing these nurses going out and getting arrested to protest the closure of these hospitals. So, I mean, you certainly see that actually play out. You see it what's going on in Chicago with the teachers union leading the fight to keep the schools open. But ultimately, this idea that we're completely fulfilled by all of this and we don't need anything outside of it is really pernicious, because it leaves you with no free time, with a ton of work, a ton of unpaid work or underpaid work. And it also just keeps us stratified by gender roles, right? Because there are plenty of male nurses who are also fighting for these hospitals, who are also fighting to save their patients, to make sure that their patients have access to care. But this is not actually a thing that only women do. There are plenty of male teachers in Chicago that are fighting to keep the schools open. You know, that these are not inherent characteristics in one or the other human being. These are just, you know, they're skills that people learn in those fields and then end up applying in very interesting ways.